All right, we're going to answer this a little bit differently. We're actually not going to use this Pythagorean theorem. We're going to answer this a little bit differently, or like label it differently than before. We're talking about different types of triangles today. So you have, instead of having two of the sides that are the exact same, you just have one. But we're going to actually also write these names on here. So like, what is SL, what is HYP, and what is LL? That's important, and that's something that we need to write down. So I'm going to write that down, and then and you will get this little chart and these directions, which these steps are the same steps as ones we did on the 9.1. But yeah, so what we're going to do is we're going to go through this, and we are going to write what we do when given the short leg. How do we get to the hypotenuse for, like for each step? We're going to write those out. Okay, you can pause the video now and write all of these down, but this is how you get from short leg to hypotenuse, short leg to long leg, and then backwards. And then also, if you're going hypotenuse to long leg, you need to find the short leg first. Let's label these triangles. Let's just go ahead and label all the top three examples. Let's do this real quick. So on your paper, you're labeling hypotenuse, short leg, long leg, and then I'm going to pause my screen and I want you to label your triangles. All right, so these are the long leg, short leg, hypotenuse, steps? No, labels. Yeah, those are the words. So we have now labeled the triangle. Now we're going to figure out, all right, what is given to us? The short leg is given. So step 3 is identify or solve for the short leg. Well, we already have that. So by doing step 2, we've also done step 3, and then we need to, find the other steps. All right, let's figure out how to do that. So we're going to say short leg to long leg, and we're also going to do short leg to hypotenuse. And doing it like this really keeps things organized and helps you to understand what's going on. So short leg to long leg is 4, and then you look up here. How do I get from short leg to long leg? I need to multiply by the square root of 3. And I know that because of my little chart up there. So 4 times the square root of 3 is just literally 4 square root 3. And then we're done. Okay? That's short leg to long leg. That's pretty easy. Short leg to hypotenuse. Take your short leg. Write it. There's 4. And then you look, what am I supposed to do? Short leg to hypotenuse, we're going to multiply by 2. Here to here, you're going to multiply by 2 because from in to 2n, it's just multiplied by 2. So 4 times 2 is 8. So answer is 8. All right, not too crazy. And I will say, this is one of the harder things we learn the entire year. So if we feel good about this, then just know, this is a challenge. If this is hard for you, it's okay. Special right triangles are difficult. All right, let's continue. Circle what's given. That's step 2. And then you want to solve for the short leg. That is step 3. And I'm reading these steps from up here. So now we want to go solve for the short leg. So that means hypotenuse to short leg. Got it? Hypotenuse to short leg. And then you look up here. How do I do that? You're going to divide by 2. All right? So 10 divided by 2 is 5. So my short leg is 5. All right? And then, now you just have to figure out all the other things that are left, which in this case is just the long leg. So then short leg to long leg. And then if you're wondering, why don't I go hypotenuse to long leg? Because you can't. It says you have to find the short leg first. That's why. So short leg to long leg, 5 times the square root of 3, which you just stick them together. So you don't even need that times symbol in between there. So 5 root 3 is going to be your long leg. And that's all this is. Okay, so I'll leave that there in case you're still writing. Circle what's given here. All right, what is given? The long leg is given. So that means that's what we need to start with. Long leg to, always going to, see step 3? Always going to the short leg. Identify or solve for the short leg. So long leg to short leg. 4, I can't write. 4 square root 3. And then you have to look, okay, what does it mean? What do we do? Long leg to short leg. We divide by the square root of 3. So I'm going to do a fraction bar. I'm not going to do the little, like, this thing. Don't do that. That's just confusing. So don't do that. I'm gonna erase it because we don't even want that on our paper. Because what happens here? If you have one in the numerator, one in the denominator, they are going to cancel out. So ultimately, when you divide by the square root of 3, the square root of 3 just disappears. And so you get 4. So my short leg equals 4. Okay, y'all see this step and how you get there? If 4 root 3 and you divide by root 3, you end up just having 4. All right, then the last one, short leg to hypotenuse, which means you're going to multiply by 2 because you look up at short leg to hypotenuse, and that's what you do. And that's going to be 8. So this is actually the same triangle as this one over here, this first one that we did. It's a different process because we're starting with a different piece. All right, so y equals 8. So I'm going to pause, and I want you to label the 3 triangles on the bottom. Okay, so I don't know, so remember when we did the 45, 45, 90 ones? The first 3 were pretty easy, pretty straightforward, nothing crazy. And then the next 3 were like, oh, these are the types of difficult problems that you may encounter as you're solving for these. And that's the same way these notes are set up as well. So like, these are the 3 different types of weird problems that you may see. You know, they may look different, there may be different variations, but these are all the ways that you approach these. So one of them is if you have an odd number on the hypotenuse, what's going to end up happening, you need to do hypotenuse to short leg, because I always go into the short leg first. So I circle what's given, the hypotenuse is given, so that means what I start with, and then I need to go to the short leg. And I would highly suggest that when you guys are doing your work, that you write this out so you can keep it organized, or you're going to get lost and you're going to get the wrong answers for X and Y. You may flip them. But whatever you do, I would label it. Hypotenuse to short leg, and then I'm like, okay, what do? I divide by 2, because that's what it says to do. So when I do that, I get 13 halves. And what you are going to want to do is make that 6.5. But you may, so not on the quiz, but on the test, you may encounter some multiple choice problems. Okay, if that's what happens and you get a multiple choice problem, you're going to see 13 halves as the answer choice for X and not 6.5. And I want you to be aware of that's what the answer is going to look like. Okay, because you don't typically mix decimals and square roots, and you're going to end up having a square root on the long leg. Okay, so typically it's fractions with square roots, and so you won't see that changed into 6.5, which, you know, is kind of nice, because like if you know if this is an odd number and that's a 2, then you just leave it like that. You don't have to do anything else. All right, short leg to long leg. So if I start with 13 halves, I write it just like this. And then I figure, all right, how do I go short leg to long leg? I need to multiply by the square root of 3. What does that look like? Okay, this is where it gets weird, and some people freak out when they see fractions. When you are multiplying something, that means you need to multiply the numerator. Okay, what does that look like? Well, that means square root of 3 over 1. That would be multiplying. If I was dividing, the square root of 3 would go down there. But I'm not. All right. So 13 root 3 over 2 is what that long leg becomes. So notice what's going on here. Does this look crazy? Yeah, it does look crazy. But are you actually doing any math? Like, are you actually ever having to put anything in the calculator for this problem? No, you're not. You're just dividing it by 2, sticking that there, sticking a root 3 on it, and then you're done. You're not actually doing anything. You just have to know how to do this and how this works in order to be able to be successful in these problems. Okay? So that's that one. So long leg. This is the one we're given here. So we need to go the short leg. All right, 2 square root 5. And then you're going to divide by square root of 3. So if this was like already a fraction and it already had something next to it, you would just multiply what it's next to. But it doesn't have that. Maybe we'll do an example like that later. So you just put it under the fraction bar, because long leg to short leg, you divide by root 3. The thing is, and I'm going to, okay, stay on this page. You don't have to turn the page, but I am going to show you the problem from yesterday. or whenever we did it. Okay, remember how we ended up with the square root on the bottom? We were like, no, you're not done. You can't do that. Same idea here. You've got a square root on the bottom. So no, you're not done. You can't do that. So we did the rationalizing the denominator by multiplying by whatever's on the bottom over itself. So we're going to do the same thing today. Multiply by root 3 over root 3. Which I know it kind of looks crazy, but ultimately all you're doing is multiplying 3 and 5. Why can the 3 and 5 get multiplied? Because they're both under the square root. So 2 stays, doesn't change. Yeah, 2 root 15. And then this, if you don't remember what this is, you can type it into the calculator, but that gets kind of funky if you don't get out of the square root. So just remember that if you multiply the same thing, and it just cancels out the square root, because the square root of 3 times the square root of 3 just becomes 3. And then that's the short leg. Okay, and then you may think, oh my gosh, now we have another step. But this last step is actually pretty easy. It's short leg to hypotenuse, which is just taking this 2 square root 15 over 3 and multiplying it by 2. So remember, when it's a fraction, that's the same as multiplying it by 2 over 1. And I highly suggest doing this because it keeps it from being, it keeps you organized. So you know what you're multiplying. You don't accidentally multiply the 3. All right, see how here we multiplied these two matched so we could multiply them? Well, same thing with here. The 15 does not match the 2. It's not under the square root. So the 2 and the 2 outside get multiplied. The 15 doesn't get touched. And the 3 stays right there. And so that ends up going here, 4 square root 15 over 3. All right, so those are those answers. All right, short leg to hypotenuse means we multiply by 2. And that I'm just getting from that chart up at the top. So 3 root 2 times 2. Okay, that's going to end up being, these two can multiply. That square root does not get changed. 3 times 2 is 6. You'll see the change there. We took that, we multiplied it by 2. We did not multiply it by anything like with the square root. So, all right, and then 3 root 2. And then the long leg, you're multiplying it by the square root of 3. All right, what's the difference between this? So the 2 and the 3 were able to multiply here because they're outside the square root. Ooh, but this 3 is outside the square root and this one is not. So this 3 on the outside actually doesn't get touched. You multiply the things that match. So 2 times 3 is 6. So 6 is under the square root. And that gets multiplied. But this ends up, this is your hypotenuse. And that is your long leg.